Hey everybody, how you doing today? I hope you're doing great. I hope you had a great week last week. I'm excited. Yes, it is official, like a referee's whistle. It is Motivational Monday, and I am excited about what I'm about ready to drop today. Good stuff, good stuff. But let's talk about a little bit about last week. We were talking about words. We were talking about sorry. How many times did you catch yourself saying you were sorry? You know, if you do it all day long, what are you going to look in the mirror at? What are you going to see at the end of the day? You're going to see nothing but sorry. You know, so the I try, we got to get rid of this I try, this mentality. We will. Jesus in the midst of the storm said, we will go to the other side. I thought that was powerful. And that's how they got there. Because you have a will, you have a valid say in what goes on in your life. And you could be, going into the shit, in the shit, or coming out. But life will have ways of handing you, you won't always have, rosy days, Some days life will give you a lemon. And that's when you practice being an alchemist. Because, hey, what do you do with lemons? You make lemonade out of it. That's being an alchemist, isn't it? But, your words, are you saying empowering words? So I hope some people caught themselves on a day-to-day basis saying, I must have said that a lot today. And are making that decision to make that change and not use disempowering words. And especially the word no to your children. Try to avoid saying no. How many times we say no, no, no? But we're going to say yes, yes, yes. And what are we saying yes about? Think about it. This is something that really I think about on a regular basis that motivates me. It's if being who you are today could get you what you want, you would already have it. And it really humbles me to think, man, I do good. I do good. But there's great. And there's another level to everything. And to be able to change change the things to be able to elevate yourself. You have to read some books. Are we reading out there? Because leaders are readers. We talk about that, But if being who you are today could get you what you want, you'd already have it, And I think one way of getting that is new information. We need new information. This is This is like a gas station for you. Every Monday, you're just filling up with some new information. And then it gives you information to go out there and win this week. And so you can think about, that's what churches should be. Gas stations, give you information for the week and let you go in regards to that. But, I think it's important that if being who you are today could get you what you want, you'd already have it. And, it's very humbling. And it makes you think, boy, I could do better in this area. I could do better in that area. Because self-reflection is where it's about. It's not about beating yourself up. It's just about having some self-reflection to say, okay, because if you're thinking the same way you were at 30 years old that you were at 20 years old, come on, man, something ain't right. And if you're thinking the same way at 50 years old that you were at 30 years old, man, something ain't going right. And like I said, readers are leaders, reading information, hanging around with new people, travel. We talked about that in our mission statement that we have. I should have that with me to read it on a regular basis. I'll bring that back. But I think it's very important that we understand that it's humbling. And one of the things we have to take a look at is sometimes, it's hard to do, is take a look at our personalities. Because this really drives a lot of things. Your personal reality, your personality makes up your personal reality. And I think if you understand your personality is made up of what? The way you think, the way you feel, and the way you behave. So if you want to change your personality, you need to look at these areas and take a look at, okay, what do I need to change about the way I feel? Am I always feeling always feeling down? Like that Eeyore spirit, in Winnie the Pooh, oh boy, just another day, Or are you thinking optimistic? Are you waking up with putting intentions out there and having optimism as a playing card? Come on, checkmate. But the other thing is the way you feel, but the way you think. Again, you need new information. That's what this is about right here. Getting new information. If you have 65,000 thoughts yesterday, and you have the same 65,000 thoughts today without no new information coming in. Oh, you're a sinking ship. You're a sinking ship, mate. Yeah, you might as well call the Coast Guard. But, so the way you think, and that's it. You need to watch how we think. We talked about that before. What the thinker thinks, the prover will prove. So you need to watch what you're thinking at all times. My nephew sent me a book, something on the book I think I was reading, and the guy said to the one guy, "Oh man, the way your skin color, you look like you got cancer." Now, if that guy would have bought that and held on to that and thought about that, in a year he probably would have had cancer. You know? You want to talk about, you watch what your words are spells. You have to make sure what you're saying is positive. Like I said, as a parent, how many times you say no to your kid? But you got to check, got to check up from the neck up. You know, you got to get rid of the stinking thinking. You can only have one thought at a time anyways. You know, and most of them are fear-based. So let's think faith. So we think the way we feel and the way we behave. Oh, yes, we got to behave right, you know, in the sense of things that we need to do, you know, maybe not so much, you know, I like to enjoy a good time like anybody else, but not so much indulgence, you know. I mean, don't get me wrong. I hear people say, like weed, they talk about weed, like, you know, people that smoke weed are just checking out. Well, I don't think so. I really don't. But there's enough reasons out there to check out for. You can check out, but you know, keep that in perspective. You know, again, like I said, we're conditioned to party hardy, rock and roll, tap a keg, and smoke a bowl every weekend. You know, because of college. So you got to watch our behavior. You know, are we getting up? Are you getting up and going for a walk? Are you getting to the gym? You know, are you eating healthy? What's your behavior like? You know, are you watching shit TV? Are you watching shit TV? You know. Are you watching something constructive that you know, get uplifting? So your behaviors, you know, what you do when no one's watching you. Isn't that where true character is, you know, or integrity or something of this nature? I'll have to think about that. But when no one's watching, that's when it's more important than anything. More important than anything. But I just want to leave a little bit here. I want to talk about a little bit about sales here too. I want to touch a little bit on sales. And, hey, guys, I'm getting more comfortable doing this every week. I appreciate you tuning in, everybody, checking it out, sharing it, liking it, and all the good stuff. But I want to talk about 4 personality traits that most people fall under. This is going to help you in sales. All right, remember, nothing is sold until someone says no. So don't give me, you know, I get these guys, well, I upsell. Nah, that was easy. You know what I mean? That wasn't a sale. Go get a couple no's, you know what I mean? And I can talk to you about no's. And I'll talk to you real quick about no's. Men especially. Rejection is a hard thing for all of us, but it seems to weigh a little bit heavier on men. And I heard it said this way. And when we were in tribes back in the day, a man would be excommunicated from the tribe based on whatever he did wrong. So if he did something very severe, he was never allowed to come back. If he did something flagrant that, you know, maybe 2 weeks, but he was rejected totally by the tribe. And that's kind of like in our DNA, our memory muscle. So for men especially, when we get rejected, and I don't want to put these kind of, well, yeah, I'm not going to go there. But when we get rejected, it's a little harder, I think, sometimes. Studies show in that sense. But all in all, I think if you're in sales, you start to know a little bit about people. You want to be an armchair psychiatrist. You know, and you got to know a little bit about people and to study people a little bit. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with it. So there's 4 different type of personalities, basically. I use fish. I use the whale. I use dolphin, sea urchin, and shark for the different personalities that we carry around. One, let's go over the whale. The whale is someone like a Mother Teresa, very giving, nurturing. Nurses, you know, are kind of like whales. You know, a mother loves to parent her kids and raise her kids, you know, kind of a whale, nurturing, you know, loving kind of personalities. And then you got the dolphin personality, which is like my sister. She's so funny. You know, if you say there's a party, she's going to say, she's going to say, what's the theme? You know, she's all jacked up. You know what I mean? She's jumping around, all excited as all hell. about it. They live a little bit cluttered. Their cars probably cluttered a lot. Dolphins cars probably cluttered a lot. They're because there's so many. They go in so many different directions. Now each one of these personality traits, you can have more than you have all four, but some are stronger than others, and everybody has them kind of. And I've heard them said like green, light, red, green, blue, and different numbers. But I use fish. I like fish, and I like the sea urchin or the dolphin because I have a little dolphin personality, and so I connect easily with dolphins. Dolphins cry themselves to sleep a lot more, and I've said that to dolphins, and they say, "Oh my God," they start crying immediately. You're right, they do. Dolphins tend to cry themselves to sleep a little bit more. Then you got the I'll save the best for last. So then you got the sea urchin, though. This is a good one. Sea urchin. I'm a sea urchin, too. Heavy sea urchin. Sea urchin is someone that always looks things up, always wants to know. Let's go down. How far down the rabbit hole can we do? Let's chase the white rabbit, guys. I want to know. If it's out there, I want to know it. And and research it and just get really get into it. And with the internet and everything we got today, I mean, we don't have to be dumb anymore. We can be pretty smart. Just start looking up the right stuff. And but I think it's my friend was over one time and he went in the bathroom and I said, by the way, make sure you shut the toilet lid when you flush. And he said, why? And I says, because that shit gets all over the damn place. Bullshit, hogwash. And I said, no, shut my damn, so he did. But he came back, next time he came back, he said, my God, I looked that up and you're right. It does, man. It gets all over the bathroom. I said, yeah, you didn't know that? I mean, so I don't know. But at least he looked it up. He was curious. I think that's a sea urchin is very curious about life. I think it's a great attribute to have, to be curious about everything that's going on in that regards. And the last one I say the best for last is a shark. Sharks are, it's pantsuits for the ladies. It's black on black, power ties, pen in the top pocket. It's that you're after money. You wake up and that's all you think about. I love money and money loves me. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Okay. I think that's a lesson that we can talk about later. But yeah, black on black. I always wear a lot of black, and it's money, and there's nothing wrong with that, like I said. And so when you're dealing with different people, you can maybe in sales, especially when you understand these personalities, when you're talking to a shark, you better have shark game. Dolphins may be a little easier because they're on the softer side. Or whales maybe, but sea urchins, you got to better give the information to them. I've been I've seen car salesmen know hardly a little bit about anything about the cars to be able to sell them. I'm thinking to myself, man, how do you not know what's going on? But I think these are great things to know when you're talking to people and dealing with people. It's like the difference between, and we can talk about this later too, because it's my time coming up here. It's the difference between being a teacher, a mentor, and a coach. People receive that differently. So when you're with people, you have to approach them the way they are. And I think that's important because everybody that walks away from you this week should feel better about being in your presence. I want to leave you with that. Much love. Yes, we're always working on getting our weather together. It was great having you on. Check you out next week. Ciao.